Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right?
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Plain Talk. I am Jessica Bell. I am your host for today, and I have brought to the podcast the first husband and wife combo for hosts. I've got my husband, Michael Bell, here with Dakota Mornings as our co-host. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes, I'm excited to get going today.
I'm just here for the snacks.
That is one thing on a road trip. He knows the way to my heart is really good snacks, both salty and sweet. Got to get the Nerd gummy clusters and some cashews. And okay, we're not going on a road trip today, although you might be on a road trip because you're listening to this podcast. And we are going to be entertaining you for the entire 60 minutes of the program. And we will start with an interview with a legislator who will be a very active participant in the upcoming legislative session. Representative Anna Novak is joining us today. She serves on the Education Committee and I believe is vice chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the North Dakota House, serving from District 33, Coal Country, obviously a place that I know and love dearly. And I am so excited to have her join us this wonderful, very, very chilly day, which is good for power prices, if I might be able to toss that in here. Anna, hello and welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today.
Awesome. Well, I think we should kick it off with probably an energy conversation since I just talked about the wonderful temperatures outside. We've got a lot of power being generated here. We're part of the MISO independent operator system. We're part of SPP here in North Dakota. Let's talk about reliability since it was one of my favorite topics in the legislature. Is there anything that you've heard from yourself or from other colleagues that will be a discussion topic relating to reliability in the upcoming legislative session?
Reliability, that's something that is near and dear to my heart as well. Last session, I had introduced a bill that would make factoring reliability into the PSC's permitting decisions. And I am not sure if I will introduce a similar bill this time around. I know, Jessica, you and I have talked about some different things, some different ideas. And in the past, you had a lot of great ideas. One was initiating a firming requirement. And so that's an idea that I think, maybe should be revisited. But I haven't heard from any of my colleagues if they are planning on introducing any kind of legislation targeting reliability. I do think that, the argument has really changed in the last couple of years where, when I was fighting it and when you were fighting it, it just felt like there were so many wind farms and other sources of electricity that were being pushed on us. And it just seemed like it was, an additional megawatt of wind power being on the lines kind of meant like there was one less megawatt of coal on the lines. It kind of took away from that. And I'm not saying that that isn't necessarily true, but I think that a lot of the different utilities are starting to realize that reliability is a big deal, and you can't just continue pushing that and be able to provide your customers with the reliability that they need. And you mentioned it today with, I mean, today it's, what is it, about 5 degrees below zero right now, something like that.
Yeah, super cold. The wind
Super
chill I
cold.
is extra cold. I thought my computer had the temp on here. I don't see it right now, but
Yeah, but as I look outside, so I work in Beulah, and I'm taking my lunch break for this, FYI. But I yeah, you're welcome, but I work at the bottom of the hill, kind of by Loaf and Jug, and if I look at the tops of the trees across the way here, that's where I can tell if it's windy out or not. And just like it is in North Dakota on a really, really cold day, there's hardly any wind outside. And so it's base load power that is keeping the lights on and keeping our heaters going, and our fridge is cold and all those things that go along with it. And so I do think that there, and especially, there's been a conversation about having nuclear be a part of our electricity generation in North Dakota. And I think just the fact that we're talking about that means that the different utilities and regulators understand that wind and solar are just not enough. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens this session. As I mentioned, there is the talk about nuclear and maybe having a study to talk about nuclear and possibly looking at change some of the different regulations that the state has in place for nuclear. Because currently, North Dakota can't really do anything for nuclear. I think there was something done in 2018, and you might remember this. But I think the EERC was studying possibly, I don't know if it was putting nuclear waste around the Rugby area. But it ended up kind of being, there was a public outcry. The people there did not want that at all. And so I think, if we do go down that path of being open to having nuclear in the state of North Dakota, we need to have those conversations with the communities that, these nuclear reactors would be placed in, to see if they're even open to it. In coal country, we have a lot of transmission lines. And so obviously we would be a place that people would look at for that. But there has been a lot of opposition to even a carbon dioxide pipeline. And so, when you see that, you wonder what local landowners that would be close to a nuclear site, how they would feel about that being in their backyard.
yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of a contrast with how the energy industry is changing. I know so many people, including those in the coal industry, are so excited about, we've got increased demand for power, not only from potential data centers going in place across the country, but also just an increase in the overall use of power, retirement of those baseload facilities, and looking for ways, creative ways, like what Rainbow has done with Coal Creek Station as an independent power producer, finding different ways to produce more electricity that's reliable for everybody to utilize, and integrating all different sorts of generation into that. Well, at the same time, we've got those really excited people. Some of those same very excited people are also suffering from a bit of NIMBY, not in my backyard, because they've also experienced a lot of development over their lifetimes, whether it's been in the Bakken or been in the coal industry or around, any other type of development. It can be hard to want those things to be happening in your backyard. And that's, I think, just going to be a constant battle, as really the whole industry seems to be changing.
Yeah, I agree. And talking with different constituents, some are in favor of it because of the job creation, whether it's, the data centers or a nickel processing plant or the Summit project or whatever the case is. There are some that are excited about it and some that are opposed to it. But I think it's also important to remember that, these are typically located in rural places in North Dakota or across the country. And I know I live in Mercer County, as do you. And in Mercer County, we we want more tax revenue. And so it's important to kind of find a good balance. I mean, certainly you don't want to be um, what you would consider the state's dumping ground by any means. But you also need to keep in mind that if you want tax revenue to come in to fund the good public education, to fund good social services and things like that, you have to say yes to some things.
Anna, one of the things that you and Jessica both have worked very hard on over the course of the last, I'm going to say 6, 7 years, is affordability,
Mhm.
electricity affordability. North Dakota has the most affordable electricity in the country.
True.
And
We're tied for the top three. I mean, we're tied for the top one with three different states.
yeah, and the delta between, say, for example, North Dakota and California, where North Dakota's just under 9 cents a kilowatt hour, California's at 21, 22 cents a kilowatt hour. That delta is increasing, and one of the focuses on from your perspective has long been affordability. Now you're shifting to reliability. I suspect you're going to bring the same enthusiasm and passion that you've brought to affordability to reliability.
Yeah, I intend to. I mean, and that's really what sets coal apart from other electricity sources. I mean, we have an idea of what a ton of coal is going to cost for a coal conversion facility, and that price doesn't really fluctuate very much. And so that is one of the great things about coal, and obviously, it's pretty much the only source that, fuel source that you can stockpile for and have a stockpile about, 2 to 3 weeks right there. And so when you have a cold snap like this, and the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining or natural gas prices are fluctuating, you don't have to worry about that with coal. Which is part of the reason, why it is, so important for our state to hold on to our coal plants and our coal mines as long as we possibly can. And obviously, my husband is a coal miner, and so there's that side of it too.
Yeah, I'm about 12 blocks away from you, as you mentioned. I'm in Beulah as well, and there happen to be a lot of coal miners around here, and supporting them and what they do every day is obviously of utmost importance. Um, we also like to support our kids here in District 33. Hook up for Dido Canyon Transit Street.
That was a great segue. Nice.
So tax revenue, of
Yeah.
course, a lot of it goes back to our school districts. What are your priorities as you enter the legislative session in regards to education?
Oh, well, it's so thankfully, for me, I serve on energy, natural resources, as you mentioned, and education, and they're two of the funnest committees, I think. But we have a lot of issues that we're going to be facing this next session within the education committee. One of the ones that I see coming to us would be free school lunches for kids at public schools. And we had a bill last session. A friend of mine, Lori Beth Hager, she's the one that introduced that. And I voted for it. What a lot of people might not realize is that the schools offer free and reduced lunch plans at school. All you have to do is fill out some paperwork, provide probably some tax information on your household, and submit to the school. What a lot of people don't know is that a lot of the parents that do qualify for that, they don't even hand in the paperwork, and so those kids they don't get that. And I know my children. So I have 4 kids. I've got 4 sons. The youngest is 7, and the oldest is 15, almost 16. And all of them do better in school, are better behave for their teachers if they have full bellies. And so you know, the state spends money on a lot of great things. We have great appropriators that know whether it's infrastructure, education needs, all those sorts of things. They do a great job at figuring out where we should spend money. And I think that there is definitely going to be an effort this session on bringing back a similar bill for free and reduced or for free lunches for students across the state of North Dakota. There was, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a survey that was published in local media. I think the Bismarck Tribune had it. I think the North Dakota Monitor did as well, where there was probably, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there was like 60% support across the state for a bill such as that. So I'm excited to see what the future holds there. Another hot topic will definitely be school choice. There was a bill last session on that. But the parameters of that was essentially that it would be, I can't remember what it started off as, but in the end, I think it was basically private school students would get $2,000 going to the institution that they went to school at. And I did not support it. I'm not anti-school choice by any means, but I think there's something like 10 private high schools in the state of North Dakota, and most of those are located within the larger towns in North Dakota, and just not that many people would benefit from a bill like that, you know? And it is tough. In District 33, we don't have any private schools here. And um, i- I think about Center. So Center is probably about 25 miles from Mandan. And there is a private school in Mandan, private elementary school. And if Center School would lose 5 kids to the private school in Mandan, that might impact them being able to stay open. I mean, when you figure that they get about $10,000 per student, that's a big deal, and that would negatively impact that entire town. And so, anyways, we'll have to see what happens. I've heard rumblings that there's going to be a couple of bills introduced regarding education savings accounts. From what I've heard, all students in North Dakota would benefit from something like that. And so the public school kids they could use the funds for a band instrument, or for possibly taking a college course in high school. The private schools could use it for tuition, and homeschooling families could use it for books and other things. They might need some kind of tutoring services, as could the public school kids or even the private school kids. And so I think, having a bill where all the students in North Dakota could benefit, I think that's when we kind of start to be on the right track for a school choice type bill.
Yeah, I agree with that. The concept seems to make a lot of sense, and I definitely understand the like just a straight voucher program and what it can do for the rural districts as compared to the more urban districts. So school choice is not a cookie cutter issue by any stretch of the imagination. You can't just take what one other state has done and apply it here in North Dakota in such a rural setting.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, and I know that there were some school choice ballot initiatives across the country this last election, and even in very red states, they they sometimes failed because their makeup is kind of like North Dakota, and the rural students didn't necessarily have anything to gain from it. And so, anyways, I guess we'll see what happens this session, but it's always hard to comment. I had people ask me, would you support a bill for school choice or for education savings accounts? And I can say that the concept sounds good, but until you see the bill language, it's hard to say whether or not it's a good idea or something that I'd support.
So can we talk Pledge of Allegiance for just a minute here this morning? I hear some rumblings out there about, a lot of other states have requirements for schools to say the pledge in the morning. Are we saying the pledge in our classrooms here in North Dakota to kick off our day, or are students required to say the pledge in the morning before they start their school day?
So North Dakota doesn't have any law requiring students to say the Pledge of Allegiance. 47 other states do. And so, this is an idea that I'm kind of kicking around, is introducing a bill um, requiring the Pledge of Allegiance. But there would be kind of some caveats. And the 47 different states that have something in place requiring the pledge, they all have different rules. Obviously, we have issues relating to free speech and things like that. But in visiting with different administrators from across the state, some of them say it and some of them don't. Most of them don't have any kind of policy in place. It's just something that they start their day with. And typically it's initiated at the office. It's not something that each teacher is required to, have the kids stand up and do it, but it's kind of initiated at the school office. And I realize that there are students that maybe don't want to say it. Maybe you have a foreign exchange student. Obviously, it doesn't make sense for them to say it. But regardless, I think that everybody can stand and be respectful to those that want to say it. As I see it, our public schools are funded by local tax dollars, state tax dollars, and federal tax dollars. And saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I grew up saying it. I'm sure that you probably did too. And when I was a kid, it didn't give me goosebumps the way that it does now. In the House chambers, every day we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I've got a couple of Cub Scouts, and before our meetings, we say the Pledge of Allegiance. And
Chili's when you mentioned that.
yes, and it's just back then when I was a child, it didn't mean as much as what it does now. But there is a sense of reverence. And I think that that's something that our kids they need to have that. And so I think that we will probably see a version of a bill that would require the public schools to say it this coming session here. I've been hearing people say that they could see a lot of support for it, and so I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, a little reverence for our country and full bellies every day for our kids in school seems like a good way to start the day. As a wife over here, I've just been chattering, and Michael actually had another question about school lunches. So
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about the means testing of families for school lunches. And is there an appetite to do away with any sort of means testing, and provide free lunch and or breakfast, given that a free lunch at school, free breakfast as well, would provide the greatest middle class tax cut you could possibly imagine. So, is there an appetite to just not have any means testing at all, and just have the state take over the funding of the food for children?
I think there is the appetite there. I really do. I guess I'm not sure about the breakfast side of it. I can see the argument for that to be included as well. But I think, as I mentioned, that there was that survey that showed that 60% of North Dakotans want that. And, I didn't see the breakdown of that and how much were Republican and how much were Democrat on that. But in my mind, I don't know that it really matters. I understand that as Republicans, conservatives, we certainly want to be fiscally responsible and not spend money when we don't have to. But, getting back to the conversation before, I have four sons, and at least two of them eat 2 lunches a day. And so the amount of money that we write for school lunches, it's a hefty price tag, and it's fine. I'm happy to do that.
I
But
just sent
sometimes my kids will.
yesterday. I just sent 500 with my kids yesterday again.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, and so yes, it costs a ton of money. And the thing is, with what I don't know if everybody knows, but so I think a regular school lunch is something like 275, somewhere around there for one lunch. But that's because they have the reduced price for that one lunch. They get federal help for that from the USDA, and the second lunch is full price. And so we're probably paying somewhere between $6 and $7 for my kids to have lunch at school. So it's when they do have 2 lunches, and so it gets to be pricey. That's a whole other argument, I guess. But I think that they're getting back to your question, Michael. I think that there would definitely be the appetite there to talk about it. Last session it passed the House and it almost passed the Senate. I think it lost in the Senate by 1 or 2 votes, if I remember correctly. And so it was really close.
It was, and I do want to as a conservative, as a fiscal conservative, you are an effective guardian of taxpayer dollars, and that's deeply appreciated. I also want to suggest that by means testing, you're growing government, whether it's local, at the school district level, or at the state. You're growing government because you're throwing sand in the gears of a distribution network, and you're adding, full-time equivalents to that. When you insert a level of means testing, you are effectively growing government and growing the strong hand of government and in picking winners and losers.
Mhm. So
So
I guess I didn't even think about that honestly before when I voted in favor of having free school lunches last session. But you bring up a really valid point. I guess I don't know because I believe I guess the means testing would be at the state level because we increased it last session. But if we were to offer it to all students, obviously we would be doing away with that.
right. And removing, winners and losers in the market.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think we should end on the fun topic of property taxes, one of my favorites. Not that I love property taxes, I just love the policy around it. Whenever I served in tax, I had to always correct myself that no, I don't love taxing. I love low taxes. I love the equitable distribution of taxes. So what are you hearing about a property tax plan for the upcoming session, and what are you willing to support, if anything, right now?
Well, I mean, I think that anytime you can provide any kind of tax relief to your constituents, you want to get on board with that. At this point, I don't know what the right plan is. Last count, I think there were 55 different property tax reduction bills, elimination bills, whatever. But the public has spoken loud and clear that they want us to do something. So we have to do something. Otherwise, we'll see it on the ballot next time around. And so I think this is a way that we have everybody at the state coming together and making sure that there aren't unintended consequences. We can think it through and make sure that every aspect of it is covered. Um, One idea that I heard, Representative Lauser, up in the Minot area, he shared a bill draft with me. And this is one that at this point, and of course, I've seen the language of the bill and it seems good, but I don't sit on the tax committee. And so there are several things that I might not be thinking about. But his idea for property tax relief would be for the state to cover the remaining portion of the property tax amount that is taken for school funding. And that's anywhere between, depending upon where you live, 25 and 40% of where your property taxes go. And that bill that he has would also cap out the amount that the local political subdivisions would be able to increase their own taxing. They'd only be able to increase it by 3 or 4% on a yearly basis. And so, and the reason why that's important is because what we're hearing is that there's concern, okay, well, if the state were to help out more, the school funding side of it, that the locals could just go ahead and increase their taxes and then essentially the people won't feel it, you know? And that wouldn't be right either. And so I appreciate that he kind of thought that side of it through. Um, I am hearing some people say that they're concerned about local control. If the state takes on more of the portion of school funding, that we could lose some of that local control. I'm not sure that we would lose the local control because the school boards and the local administration make decisions. But obviously, there are strings attached whenever you receive tax dollars from a different entity that isn't local. So that would be a concern there. But in North Dakota, it's in our state constitution that we are required to provide a free public education for students K through 12. To offer it. They don't have to take it. They can do private school, they can do homeschooling, but we're required to offer it. And so in my mind, it does make sense for the state to cover more of that tax bill.
I I like all of those proposals, all of those concepts that you're talking about, and I think whatever combination the legislature comes up with, I think it'll be good for all of the constituents in North Dakota. And I am just really excited to see some real change in property taxes as the state moves forward. The people have asked for it, obviously, and I know the legislature will deliver. So, and I have now taken up the 30 minutes that I promised I would take up of your time. So thank you so much for joining us.
To go back to energy for a second. Recognizing that the Biden-Harris administration, through a highly top-down regulatory model, was trying to dictate to North Dakota how to produce energy. And also recognizing that President Trump loves North Dakota because we're producers. How freeing is that, being part of, the energy committee, the vice chair of the energy committee on the House side, recognizing that Governor Doug Burgum is the co-chair of the Energy Council.
Unbelievable, by the way. I mean, that is incredible. That was the best appointment that I think Trump has made, and they all seem fantastic, but for North Dakota, for him to be in charge of giving out the permits and things like that, I mean, it's huge, and especially for coal country. I mean, I had a conversation with a coal lobbyist not too long ago, and he was telling me about the length of time that it takes for them to get permits. And, 10, 15 years ago, it, might be within a year they could get the permit. Now it's, 5 to 10 years. And the intent behind that wasn't just to make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. It was essentially to stop, development of the fossil fuel industry, And so it's really exciting for the new administration to take place. And, from coal country's perspective, I just feel like we can finally kind of relax again. My deodorant bill is going to be cut in half at this point. So I'm not going to be so nervous and sweating all the time. But yeah, it's really exciting. And just to, not feel weighted down so much. And that, the coal industry has been under fire since, the Obama administration. And it just seems like, at the end of last session, there were so many different laws and policies that were put down from the federal government. And it just felt like, and Jessica, you can probably speak to this better than I can, but it just seemed like coal was being attacked at every single angle that they possibly could. And I think, yeah, well, and I think that the Biden-Harris administration realized that they probably weren't going to be successful in a lot of a lot of the things that they try to push on us. But there is some winning that takes place, even if something fails, because these things are caught up in court for so many years. And industry has to start adapting, even while the lawsuits are in the courts.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't even be mad at you for interrupting my wrap up since it was an energy question. I am so excited to deal with the Trump administration and Burgum's leadership on the Energy Council front. I think it's really going to open some doors for the industry and for our state, and it's just really exciting. So
it is. Burgum's he's going to do a great job in that position, and I'm so excited for President Trump to be inaugurated actually this month now.
Yeah, this month. A countdown is on 17 days. So, yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for spending your lunch with us, and good luck in the upcoming legislative session. Hopefully it's a fun one, and it goes by quickly.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and appreciate you having me on today.
Representative Anna Novak, thank you so much for taking the time.
Mr. Radio Man.
Hey friends, we've got a new way for you to participate in the show. You can now call us or text us with your questions, comments, or anything you want us to discuss on Plain Talk. Just give us a call or shoot us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. It's super easy. Leave your message, tell us your name and where you're from, and we might feature it on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for listening to Plain Talk. Now let's get back to today's episode.
Well, Anna is just fantastic. And I realized when you called her Representative Novak, I likely should have been doing that as well. I've just known her for so long and I'm just so excited for her in this upcoming session. She just really seems to have stepped into her own. She's got a leadership role. She's going to do great things for District 33. And I'm just so excited for it.
Well, I had 2 points I want to make. Number one is that you were very helpful to Anna, and not many people know this, but you and Anna
Tell.
you kind of bonded years ago, long before she ran for the legislature. And I think it's just a great symbiotic relationship because you guys can get together and nerd out on energy policy for hours on end. The other point I want to make is that Anna Novak, Representative Anna Novak, is the perfect embodiment of a citizen legislator. And she represents her constituents to a degree that is unknown outside of North Dakota and unrecognized outside of North Dakota. She is a mom. Well, she's a wife, she's a mom, and a full-time employee. She's a financial advisor. Her husband's a coal miner, and all of these things add up and make her that impactful in the legislature in a very tangible way.
Well, I've always argued that perspective of having young kids in school is underrepresented in the legislature because it's hard, right? It's hard to be a hard-time legislator when you've got kids at home to keep track of. And I will say it is so much easier to keep track of my kids. Not that I wasn't before. I certainly was. But the amount of time that serving takes all year round, not just during the session, but all year round. Kudos to people like Anna who run. There are more young moms and young dads who are running for the legislature. And I think that perspective, especially when you're talking about policies like property taxes and local control for schools and school lunches, all of those things need to have that young person's perspective at the table. And when people like Anna run for the legislature, I just get super excited about it.
Well, and I love the fact that she is a woman of deep, abiding faith, and that guides her every position and her every consideration of legislation, not only during the legislative session, but during the rest of the uh, 18 months when she's in service on a biennium basis. So I love the fact that she feels strongly enough to glorify the Lord by serving in the legislature, but first by putting her name on a ballot, because we have a deep respect for that. You've done it, I've never done it, and I love the fact that she is guided by the Lord and works to glorify the Lord in everything she does.
Yeah, and she is going to be working it this session. She got her hands full passing the requirement to say the pledge in the classrooms. I know she doesn't have a plan for the energy industry that she was ready to share this morning, but I'm certain that whatever it is, it's not going to be an easy lift.
Yeah.
And she's not afraid of hard things. So
Well, and let's not kid ourselves. Raising 4 boys, she doesn't sleep anyway. So this is just a continuation of that.
she maybe sleeps upright during baseball games, and that's not something I don't always sleeps during baseball. So do we have to talk baseball since we always talk baseball?
Well, we can talk about college football.
Did Notre Dame win last night?
Notre Dame
Yesterday afternoon, I should.
Notre Dame took a club to University of Georgia Bulldogs, knocked off the number 2 team in the nation, is in the semifinals of the college football playoffs.
Semifinals. That's exciting. And I hear this little team from Fargo may or may not have a little something. Update. I am ready. I've got my Bison football spread up here in my home office as Michael and I are sitting here side by side staring at each other while we do this podcast. I'm super excited for that. Oh shoot, I had a transition into something else. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, and maybe it's important to inform people, you're going to the inauguration.
Oh, I don't think it's important to inform people of that at all, but I am. I both Governor Armstrong's inauguration followed with one day in between Trump's inauguration. So I am looking forward to feeling what I anticipate will be a palpable excitement in the air in Washington, D.C.
The energy during inaugurations, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican.
You can pull another story of like, I've been there and it's so exciting.
The enthusiasm, the energy is just incredible. I mean, you can't follow. If you could follow, you'd be a zillion.
I am super excited to experience that. So it should be a fun trip. But honestly, because I'm such a super geek, I am far more excited to watch that council of energy, or what are they called?
National Energy
Council. You'd think they could remember that that National Energy Council and all of the things that they're going to be pumping out of that committee, because there are so many things across the board that you don't need legislative action to take care of, that they can get headed in the right direction, and then they can codify it. They really could. They could codify it in Congress. I know it's a novel concept, but that is how you keep it in place, is if you can codify it in Congress. And I think they should do that. And be sure to share those thoughts. And anyway,
well, this is a wonderful example of exporting North Dakota values to Washington, D.C.
right?
And the work ethic and the entrepreneurship and the spirit of energy production being exported to Washington, D.C. And that's what I'm most excited about, is because, the folks on the council are going to be looking to Chris Wright and Doug Burgum both for leadership.
Fan, I can't even. I just love it. I'm so
excited. They're going to be looking to them for leadership, and it's going to be important for Governor Burgum and for Chris Wright to step back, Secretary nominee Chris Wright, to step back for a second and say, wait, we've done this. We started doing this 25 years ago, because the first thing that needs to be accomplished is to take away the adversarial relationship that exists between regulators and industry folks. And that has been done in North Dakota going back 30 years. And it has been a massive success because everybody's invested in the process of taking away the adversarial relationship.
Well, right. It's like a parent, right? Like, you want to have a good relationship with your children. You want to have a good relationship with regulators. You're all working for the same goal, and that is to launch a project. Parenting takes up an inordinate amount of time in my brain. I've got a almost 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, both girls, and let me tell you, it's a lot. So I spend a lot of time thinking about environmental regulations because I'm a total geek. I happen to work for an energy company too that probably has a little something to do with it.
Man, I was trying to do a really big thing.
Right. But you want to have that solid relationship and friendship basis. And then when appropriate, you want to be able to put the hammer down, and you want to be able to say no. And so I think that's the piece that everybody misses when they talk about environmental regulations. And I think industry is a bit better behaved than teenagers, in that we want to protect the environment. We want to comply with regulations, but we want to comply with reasonable regulations. And when we're out of line, we need the EPA to tell us we're out of line, but only when it comes to reasonable regulations that improve public health. And that's where they've overstepped just a million times over in the last 4 years, and then prior to 2016.
Well, and I agree. And when you have a Democrat administration, they outsource energy policy to groups like the Sierra Club, like the Dakota Resources Council, like the national, the NRDC. And they get the pen to write the regulations based on their prism of all oil companies, all fossil fuel companies, all electricity production is inherently evil. And when you're looking at it from that prism, it takes up too much space, because capitalism is a self-cleaning exercise. And that's part of the beauty of the energy industry in North Dakota, is that when you have regulators working with those regulated, you have better public policy, as opposed to an adversarial position where there's such fundamental mistrust on both sides.
Yeah. And like you said before, both Wright and Burgum are perfectly suited to fill those roles.
Because they've done it.
And then also the new head of the EPA, who is, can you bet that me?
The representative from regulatory relief,
Yes.
Lee Zeldin.
Yes, Lee Zeldin. I'm excited about that pick too. I know far less about Representative Zeldin. Zeldin. But I'm excited knowing, what his nickname is, regulatory relief. I think that that's really going to help. I know we talk about like eliminating EPA and all sorts of things. We can't forget that, the impetus of the EPA actually came from a good place. And so while they may be out of control a little bit now, they're going to have to systematically go through all of the employees to figure out exactly what they need. And hopefully Republicans can get something done to get that office right-sized and headed in the right direction. It'd be an handful.
You're absolutely right, especially given that the average age of an EPA employee is 28 years old. Yeah, I mean, they're not going anywhere. And Representative Zeldin has the direct benefit of now being a cabinet secretary nominee. I don't think there's any chance that he doesn't get appointed.
I can see too.
He's already been appointed, but he doesn't get confirmed by the Senate.
Well, he has to go through the nomination process still, right? Or not
Hearings,
all the stuff.
I think he'll be fine in that. But one of the important things to note is that he served in Congress.
Right.
And so he understands how the inertial bureaucracy moves, especially at EPA. There's a reason why he was nicknamed the representative from regulatory relief back in 2006 or 8, somewhere around there.
Well, let's see. What else do we need to talk about today? Do we want to?
You want to talk about baseball? Wait.
It's not baseball season. Has been very, very sad right now.
Special props to Chad Oban on his Dodgers winning the World Series, beating Rob Port's Yankees quite handily. I think there's a 5th inning there in a game that's going to go down in history.
I just want to
ignominiously for Rob.
I did not condone, support, or approve this message prior to the recording of this show. But he's an Angels fan. So when's the last time the Angels were in the World Series?
He won the World Series in 2002.
See, that's the year I graduated from high school. So that's
comforting.
Exciting.
That's comforting.
He wanted to talk about baseball.
Yeah, I was skipped on the rake there, didn't I?
Let's talk a little bit about these terrorist attacks.
Okay.
It's a little bit more of a serious conversation. But I don't feel comfortable with us having a political podcast episode on January 3rd and not talking about what happened on January 1st.
Idea.
I'm sure you have read far more than me as my days have been a little chaotic lately. But as I understand it, this is a military veteran.
Both the New Orleans murderer and the murderer in Las Vegas were both Army veterans. They both served a tour in Iraq. They both were stationed in North Carolina, if I remember correctly. Secretary nominee Tom Homan, Border Czar nominee Tom Homan made a point on yesterday morning that he would not be surprised, and in fact, he is fairly certain that there is an overlap between the two men who murdered, all the people in New Orleans and then injured so many folks.
14 in New Orleans.
14, yeah. I'm not counting the guy who died in the shootout with the police who perpetrated the murder. I'm not counting him in the death toll.
Yeah, it's disheartening and it's scary, and it makes me wonder how it wasn't caught. I know that the guy from New Orleans had actually posted some Facebook videos prior to prior to him, renting the Turo car and moving forward. And I guess I wanted to bring it up so that we could maybe talk about any policy implications this might have for a Republican Congress, a Republican presidency, but then also just to send our condolences to the families that have been affected by this just terrible, terrible tragedy. I know it's heavy for all of us as Americans to see something like this happen, and maybe just talk a little bit about what we could do to try and prevent something like this, especially if it's Army veterans. Uh, what what do you think? What do you think we can do?
That's a really sticky wicket, and there are people who are much smarter than I am who are keeping awake at night, thinking through the ramifications of policy to prohibit or preempt something like this happening. What you have is initially an overreaction, and the legislators in this particular case are taking great care because there's a trade-off. If you want the perception of safety and security, you have to give up liberty. So if there was something like this about to happen, there are monitors in place to keep track of those people. But you've given up liberty, especially in the First Amendment freedom of speech rights. But so there's always that trade-off between the perception of security and what you're willing to give up from a liberty perspective.
That safety and security in exchange for freedom or liberty is something we talked a lot about post-COVID in the 21 legislative session. And you always have to be so cautious. It was something that I made sure to lecture people about, especially when you're talking about the requirement of masks.
Yep.
You have to make sure that you are okay taking that freedom away from people and vaccines and all sorts of things, whether it's a company requiring them or somebody who is supposed to be receiving them. Trying to make sure that freedom stays in place has to be first.
Yeah.
And then the other pieces, the safety, fall into place. But it's a sticky widget, and I don't envy those who are staying up at night thinking about the detailed policy here.
Yeah.
So
Amen. I mean, you and I have, the luxury of commenting, almost like an armchair quarterback, on where the failures came from. I think that we're still in the fog of war with respect to both Las Vegas and New Orleans. And so I think we all need to just pause for a second and allow the information to bubble up to the top, and then take comprehensive measures. This is no time for weak in the knees legislators. This is time for conservatives and liberals to hash this out. And it is no time for people who shift with the wind, and want to close down certain rights, to get us through this very difficult security breach.
yes, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, and I think that the people, the families affected by this murder, in New Orleans specifically, I think that they need a large say, and they have unfortunately earned the right to have their voices heard in a very clarifying manner.
Yeah. We're gonna switch topics. We're gonna end on a positive note.
Yes,
today.
So I always like to end the good words on an up, ladies and gents.
We will put a pin in it because I have to say it if I'm the host. But not yet. We were not pinning it yet. I had not thought about this beforehand. So FYI, our responses to this are unbeknownst to me at this point, and Michael doesn't even know the question yet.
Pins and needles, speaking irons.
3 issues in this North Dakota legislative session. What are they going to be? Predictions.
Tax reform.
Oh, you can't pick as leading. Tax reform and relief is all
Tax reform and relief.
my number one. But let's get a little more specific. Are you talking property taxes? Are you talking income taxes? What are they?
I'm talking. Believe that, based on my conversations with a number of legislators, that property tax reform and relief is going to be the topic du jour. Conversation with Governor Armstrong.
Governor Armstrong.
I don't think that there is much of a stomach to deal with income taxes or sales tax and that sort of thing. I think that the focus is going to be, and rightly so, after the drubbing that Measure 4 took, I think that it rightly so should be property tax reform and relief. And how that takes shape, there are better minds than I willing and able to tackle those issues. I'm hearing, any number of things across the spectrum, and I'm just glad that, Governor Armstrong and Lieutenant Governor Strinden are former legislators, and they understand the process fundamentally, and so you're going to have a really collaborative, opportunity.
Yeah, I think it will be collaborative, and I think that's going to be really fun and also very different for legislators.
Sure. Yeah.
That is, I think we're going to see a change in how those things are managed. Not that one way is good and one way is bad. It's just different. And I think he'll be really involved in the policy because he's a policy geek and he just loves that stuff.
Well, I'll go ahead and say it then. I mean, Governor Burgum, I believe, missed a strike, missed a two-hop ground ball, however you want to characterize it, by his adversarial relationship with the legislature. He thought, he felt that he could come in and in very much a CEO manner, tell him what to do. I mean, he was shaped by the fact that he built a company from the ground up. It's a wonderful story, but I think he missed a step. And really blew a unique opportunity that I think that Governor Armstrong will truly capitalize on.
Yeah, I am super excited to watch Governor Armstrong move into this legislative session, provide leadership and guidance, and get into a couple fights with the legislature. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I love it. I mentioned on the show today, having had a conversation with a former legislator who is particularly close to Kelly. And this legislator, he's talking about how he is glad that he is not in the legislature anymore because he would have to fight with Kelly, not on a lot of things, but on a couple of things. And that is just
But that friction is necessary. Sharpens iron. Yeah, that's what the process is structured for. And so I'm just looking forward to watching it. Okay, so we both agree it's property tax for number one. I'm gonna go with, for my number two, energy development and and sustaining the Bakken long term. I think that is going to be a conversation because we're going to hit 2026 here and we're not going to be able to get rid of the natural gas that we have in the Bakken. And so there are a bunch of different projects out there that are looking to utilize that gas in state, and I think making sure that the regulatory environment is set up for that is going to be a priority for legislators this session.
I agree with that. I think that is going to be a top priority. I think that there is very much a stomach for continuing North Dakota's dominance in electricity generation, utilizing fossil fuels and not being afraid of it anymore, not being embarrassed by it anymore, not hiding in a corner, saying, don't hit me anymore. There is very much a unique opportunity, like what Representative Novak and I talked about, and you talked about, North Dakota has the lowest electricity rates in the nation and has now turned its focus to reliability. And I think that is going to be the watchword, and North Dakota citizens, North Dakota constituents are going to benefit directly by this.
Yeah, I think so. I think I am going to wear my I Heart Fossil Fuels pin around as much as I possibly can.
Well, and all legislative stuff. Yeah, one of the things that I think is going to take very much a backseat is these cultural, social divisive issues. I think that the 2023 legislature put those front and center, and that I think was a misstep. Though I never put my name on a ballot, so
yeah, easy over there, Bell.
Well, I think it was a misstep because it didn't recognize the beast, which is the North Dakota economy and how it needs to be fed. We have massive workforce issues here in North Dakota, which I think is going to be for free. I thought that's going to be number 3.
Yeah, I had a different number, but I like
J.D. Ralston has done a really incredible job shepherding it. But then you also have Dickinson Trinity High School opening up a child care center, and Maria Scari and the folks, Maria, they've done just an incredible job of thinking ahead to what the workforce needs in the 21st into the 22nd century.
Okay, so we're gonna build out our energy industry, and we're gonna have the workforce to do it, and our property taxes are gonna be low while we're doing it. I think we nailed it. So all taken care of. No need to worry. That being said, we are going to put a pin in it there. I want to thank you all for joining us on this episode of Plain Talk. Of course, let Rob and Chad know that the bell bump has now been doubled. And so that means that I'm sure we're going to be back for more with the husband and wife combo. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season, a very Merry Christmas, and are heading into this wonderful Happy New Year with a positive outlook and with much excitement about the upcoming legislative session. Thanks all and have a great day.
That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
Mr. Radio Man.